Yes, so tonight something a bit florally, something that uses. I really get weirdly obsessed with color combinations at times, and there's something about a kind of bluish green and a pinky sort of a pink, but something with on the sort of more orange side of pink that I get really obsessed with. So we're going to play with my two favourite colours for a bit tonight. So we're going to start off with just quite a simple circle. We're going to start off again with really quite simple circle shapes, and then we're going to go in with pen work to kind of turn them into something slightly more floral. So I'm going to start off with. I'm not going to do the whole page wet, but I'm going to start by painting some circles in water. So I'm going to do one sort of roughly round here. Composition wise, if you're going to do, I tend to find if you do bigger shapes near the bottom, you have that sense of gravity behind them, which kind of helps the weight of the picture. So I'm just going to paint, as you see, I'm just painting circle there in in water. Purest wet, my lord, I'm using. And then I'm going to be doing a half circle up here, because I want to get that feeling of things disappearing off the page. I kind of always like that sense that something's moving off into the wild blue yonder, and then maybe a sort of circle shape here. And then on these, we're going to use reds and pinks to kind of create a sort of aurora, which is going to become a floral kind of motif or a kind of idea of a flower. So obviously you can choose whatever colours you want. I'm hoping to get a kind of orangey colour going on, orangey, reddy, pinky kind of that sort of zone. I prefer the kind of salmony, orangey pinks to very bluey pinks for me, but you might be more on that way. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to start by following that kind of wet shape that I had in, and I'm hoping to get that lovely soft kind of floaty, smoky kind of quality. And I'm trying to find where the wet is, as it were, with my brush, just to sort of begin with, so that I can get it to run, and hopefully the drier paper around that will be less, will give you less movement, so you can kind of tell where it's going. And then of course I've got that half moon shape sort of peeking up at the top here, so again just a nice sweep. And don't worry, if you get dribbles running down or any of that, that's not a problem, because they can all become things that we work with later. Let me just slightly tilt up. I'm going to have to come back a little bit, I think, so you can see. All of my my zoom just seems to have cut out for some reason, so I'm going to keep talking of them on the video and hopefully come back in again. Oh no, don't do this to me. I will have to edit this bit out if it's going to be can you check the internet for me, please? Hello? Oh, I'm back. Am I back? I am back. Sorry about that if I disappeared for a minute. I'll have to edit that bit out of my video, because it was a bit, there was a lot of me going, oh no, I've lost my internet connection. Right, hello, sorry about that, I'm back. I hope nobody, right, so my video's now got me going, oh no, I've been locked out, but I'm back. So I don't know why that happened. My internet seems to be fine. Yep, it's got loads of, oh no, it's doing a weird thing. If I drop out for a minute, just forgive me, it should come back on again. This is the trouble of living in a townhouse when your internet's not on the same floor as you. Right, so hopefully we'll continue. So then I've got those two shapes here, and then there's kind of another shape here, which luckily hasn't dried in the time that I've been thrown out by the internet, so that's good. So I've just got those sort of two initial shapes. I'm leaving the sort of centres at the moment. We'll come back and find things to do with them as we go on. And then once I've sort of established where I want my edge sort of flower to be, I'm just going to slightly adjust my light. That's a bit better. I'm going to come back, and I'm just trying to find that outer edge of my circle. So I'm kind of just looking at where that top edge of my brush comes and just following the paint that I've got. So I'm getting like a sort of second layer just to bring a deeper colour into that sort of top edge. I don't know if I'll be able to go round in one complete brush stroke, but I'm just following that sort of shape round, and again coming round on this side, just wanting to make that outside edge of the circle that I'm painting a bit more defined and a bit stronger. like that. So I'm just giving it a sort of like a slightly sort of double layer kind of approach. And I've got the same in on this one. Just coming round again, really watching the top edge of my brush just to follow the shape that I've got going on. Doesn't have to be a hugely different colour tone, but something slightly stronger, maybe something redder, something more poppy-ish. Just following that shape, and I want it to slightly wobble. Just thinking about the outside shapes. We'll come back to the rest of it in a minute. And then on the top edge there as well, I can just do the same on this one, but just this sort of bottom of this half moon shape, just coming round and following that edge just to sort of firm it up a bit. It doesn't matter if you've got sort of two lines or anything. We can all live with those. And then I think we might introduce a few small areas of maybe red, maybe with a round brush. Some of those sort of nice orangey red colours. Let's get a few more going on into our picture. So maybe some smaller ones kind of on a dry paper. I'm not going to wet it first. I'm just going to bring them into up here just to get some nice intense sort of moments of colour coming in around these sort of areas. That's it, maybe. And then maybe a couple. We can decide. You can put them sort of all sorts of places really, but it's just to sort of I want to bring another one I think in to kind of overlap this a little bit maybe, and maybe using the drier paint so you get a slightly different quality just sort of coming in on those circles. It doesn't look very floral yet, does it? Well, we will get there. We will get there. And I think where I've got that smaller brush now, I might go back in again and just add another layer of edge to the softer shapes that we've got going on. So just again using that smaller, maybe chisel-y brush on the damper paper, but just trying to darken up that edge a little bit, just giving it a little bit more definition. If you can follow it, if you go off it, it doesn't really matter. We just wanted to give that kind of a nice crisp edge as it comes around. There we go. And then I'm going to fill in a bit of that one as well. Make that sort of stronger. And I've just got to do this last one. But hopefully by sort of like working to just firm up that edge each time around, you're getting a nice sort of great gradient between that inner centre of the shape and then sort of softening out to the edge. You know, we're getting a sort of a nice ombre kind of effect, as that word has become, means different coloured hair, doesn't it really? But I tend to see it, or cake design, you get ombre, but it just kind of gives it that feel of varying colours coming round. So there we go. So that's kind of where we're getting our sort of red areas in. I think it'd be quite nice to think about some green as well into that now, because it's that combination of greens and pinky kind of colours that really starts to make it look quite floral. I'm not going to do loads because we do quite a lot of the greens with the pen, I think. But green wise, I'm going to try and go for a bluish green, because it's always my favourite is to be on the kind of blue spectrum with my greens. But obviously if you fancy spring green, it's going to be absolutely fine. I just want to get some sort of background in. I'm hoping that we're not going to run too much into the reds, just to kind of keep them. So I just want to sort of, I'm going to just start painting just some swirls of green in. I'm not going to try and kind of fill the whole background in, but I just want to get some, I'm going to go for a bigger brush, I think. Just get some green tones in on the page. I'm not going to wet it first, because I don't want to have huge amounts of run with the green. I don't want it to come into the reds too much. I want to keep it nice and the colours nice and separate. Come on, green. My green paint is being strangely reluctant tonight. And then I want to think about some of those shapes. So yes, some of those kind of spirals, circles, maybe doing a similar kind of thing, just working around the lines that you've got, just to get some half moon shapes in, to fill some of those in. Yeah, that's around there. And then kind of like some sweeps of paint as if they're kind of poking out behind. This one again, I just want to sweep it around. I don't mind some spread and things happening. I'm just going to try and keep it slightly from dribbling too much down through the paints, but you know, oh look, that's got quite a nice breathe, and I'm quite enjoying that look. If you kind of get a big brush and put it on the paper and give it a twist like a sort of spiral, you kind of get some nice lines that are sort of happening inside. Relatively dry paint, but you can sort of pull the brush around in a kind of twist and you get some nice bristle marks kind of coming there and getting us a bit of texture as well, you know, which is really nice. I'm enjoying that, so let's do some more of those. Let's sort of, because you can sort of put on an edge look and then revolve your brush round through a kind of half moon, coming back round onto it, and it's got quite a nice feel, nice texture. We're getting some, and I quite like it sometimes when those brushes do get a little bit broken up and you can kind of get a stripiness happening on some of the sort of areas. It's not doing it when you want it to, of course, you know, it'll always do it when you don't want it to, but not when you do. But I'm just going to get a bit more shades of green in. I think we need to get a bit more texture, just like a sort of green space at the top there. So let's do some more of these spirals in to get sort of twists. I think we'll call them twists, you know, to get into that as well, to get some definition, some texture, something a bit different happening around here. I'm going to try a bigger brush. I've got one of my huge brushes. I just want to see what that looks like by doing. This is such a huge brush. I'm not sure it's a really big brush, this one. It was great. It's from a set I got from the Works, and it really was a set of 5 for about £2, and they're probably not the world's greatest quality brushes, but what's quite nice is you can kind of go across 3 pans of paint in one sweep. So I've got like blue and green and all 2 shades of green and blue on here, so then I can get, let's try doing a big twist, just revolving the brush round. That's quite cool. I'm quite liking that. That's sort of got a really nice feel to it, almost like a kind of big lily leaf, which is kind of what I'm after. So maybe echo that sort of shape round, and because it's quite dry, you get that splitting in the bristles. I think that's a really nice. I'm hoping you're getting a similar kind of effect because it's a really nice. I think it's really nice to play with. So let's put another one of those in, kind of down the bottom. So if the paint is quite dry and the paper is dry, you get that more kind of broken line, which has a kind of feel of water. You know, the way water ripples, you drop a stone into it. That kind of feel. I've got like sort of like an inbuilt rainbow kind of feel. So there we go. So that's got quite a lot of surface covered in it. I don't know that I want to do a lot more. I think I want to get in onto the brush. That's the word. A pen. That's the word. Work. So I'm going to give it a 30 seconds like dry. It's not too wet tonight because we've been a bit more abstemious with the water. I am going to just give it a quick dry for 30 seconds just so that it is completely dry, and then we're going to go and have a look at some of the shapes we can create inside our background. So I'm just going to mute so I can get the hairdryer out. So it's time for the hairdryers, and I'll be back in a minute or so. Thank you, love. Okay, right, so we're back and I've got a fairly nice dry surface. Now I'm going to focus in on this large piece at the bottom at a sort of starting point, and then we'll move into some of the other pieces to begin with. But I want to sort of create, so there's going to be a lot of line work on this to kind of change it from it sort of feeling where it is now. I'm going to start with with the darkest sort of line to begin with. So I'm going to be using I say dark line. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as black on this one this week. I might keep it away from black. I'll see. I always say that, and then I end up going, no, actually, I do want to go. If you need to go a bit darker, then you can sort of go into black. But I've got a sort of brown sepia set of pens. I'm just trying to find one that isn't completely microscopic. Here we go. So I've got a brown pen. You could, if you haven't got a brown pen, obviously you can use a black pen, but a brownish felt tip or anything like that's going to be fine. If not, then do just go for black. It won't be horrible anyway, but I just wanted to keep my colours on the kind of warm side. So the first thing I'm going to do is just find the edge of this big shape here. So it's just following that painted line round first of all, and seeing how this looks. I'm going to do this line. If I decide it's not dark enough, then we will go for black. But, you know, you have to kind of see it out, don't you? And then sort of get a sense of where you are with it. Or I might use this, and I think I may go into black as well. But we'll see. So I'm just following that edge round, just to sort of give that, determining where that sort of centre is. And it's not really centre, is it? I mean, the edge. The edge is. So I'm going to come around and just continue around. Just follow the paint where it's gone, and make the decision about where you want to go, just see where the line takes you around that shape. And if you've got that sort of round shape with your paint, then that's what you're going to be following, that's what you're going to get. So I've just got a sort of bit there where the paint's quite sort of splodgy, so I've just allowed that to sort of guide where I'm going. And then I've got this sort of centre in here, and I want to put like a centre in the middle that looks like a sort of flower head. So to do that, I'm going to start by just doing small circles. I'm going to do more than one, but I'm just going to cluster them together in the middle, because often when you look at the centre of a flower, particularly something like one of those big beautiful poppies that you get with the big sort of blousy sort of petals, they have a kind of this sort of mini fleury kind of effect in the middle there. Their centres are all made up of these really tiny components all kind of clustered together. It's very dark, like sort of eye-like centre. So to begin with, I'm just going to doing like a honeycomb of shapes in the middle. And what's quite nice about this is you can build up slowly. You don't have to do a whole big circle. You can decide how big you want your centre, because you can start on with one circle, you can add and you can add and you can add, and you can kind of change the shape as you go. You can edit, so you can decide on the kind of final shape that you want. We'll probably come back and put a bit more work into here. I think this is where I might want to go a bit darker, because poppies particularly do have these very sort of, they are very like sort of very dark eyes at the centre of all their soft petals. So that's kind of the effect I'm after, but I'm just starting with this brown colour. So I've got those in here, so that starts to show you where the centre is. You can do it as big or any sort of size you want, really. I'm not going to do a lot more to it at the moment. I'm just going to do, you might want to, as you come to the edge of where you think your centre is, you might come in and do smaller ones sort of closer to around the edge. So see the size that you've done in the middle and do like a definitely smaller selection around the edge, so it just sort of starts to peter out. And you'll find that it has that slightly sort of 3D effect. It helps to make it look like the shape is kind of a round shape and not just a flat kind of disc. And then I'm going to get a pinky or an orangey pen. Orange works really well, pink works really well, red if you've got it, just something that isn't huge, kind of like it's in the same ballpark as the colour you're kind of working on. And I'm going to start taking some lines out. So there's lots of ways you can do this. You can go around and do one at a time. I kind of like doing them almost like the clock face, then I can keep on subdividing where I'm going. So I'm just going to take a line up to the edge. To begin with, they look quite spare. And then so I do 12 o'clock and then 6 o'clock, sort of like that. And then 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. But I'm going to keep on adding my lines in to start breaking up and giving this kind of a surface, so that I then each time I'm going in between, segmenting. They don't have to be perfectly straight. You can put a little bit of a wiggle in them or a sort of wave. You don't want, this is definitely not a kind of getting your rulers out job. This is sort of going with the, you want that sort of more kind of organic kind of feel. And so I've gone around once, so I've now got it into sort of 8 segments, and then I'm going to keep on going to divide each one. I just find that this works better for me than trying to sort of start on one side and get them exactly spaced right and work all the way around, because I find you always end up not quite getting the rhythm right. So I'm just going to keep on breaking it up like that. And again, I mean, you don't have to have them perfectly equal-sized distances at all, because that's the lovely thing about it. It doesn't have to be super duper perfect. And in fact, if you start forgetting where you've gone, just look and see where you think the big spaces are and just bring a line through just to continue that kind of feel. And the more you do, the more you start to get this feeling like the sort of veins that you get in a petal. But you can see how it isn't obliterating the painting underneath, so you're still seeing that nice colour transition kind of underneath. It doesn't have to be so dense that you don't see that, because that would be rather a waste if we just kept going with this so that eventually you didn't see the paint at all, because then you might as well just do a pen drawing. But just allowing a little bit of that colour to come through is just giving it that sort of petal-like feel, but keeping the paint, the expressiveness of the paint behind it. So when I sort of feel like, that's probably enough of those for now, what I might do is then just on this outside edge, maybe just do ones that come halfway or like 3/4. So I'm going to go around again, but they're just letting them fade out, so they're not going all the way to the centre. And as I always say every week, almost in every lesson that I do, the key is to always think about how the more pen line you put on the paper, the darker that area is. So just by doing these half lines, we're keeping the lightness in the centre, but we're just darkening up the edge to give that a bit more definition. So where I've got like a large triangle at the top or a larger space, I can put 2 lines in. It's fine. No one's going to be counting. But I'm just going to work my way round and slowly just put like half lines in. And as you see, as you've gone all the way around, it's starting to give that again a bit of different kind of form, and adds a little bit of a shadow, depth of colour maybe. And again, depending on how you feel, you could go back round and do it again. You can go in between and just let those lines merge down together, so that again the next row of lines you put in between are even shorter, just like a couple of centimetres. But again, it's just adding a bit of sort of depth and definition to that edge that we've created in paint. And you can keep going round and round doing this, sort of getting this edge stronger and stronger just by adding these little lines coming out from it. And we can do a similar thing in the centre as well. So once you've gone round here, we're going to look at that centre area again and just try and get a bit more sort of smokiness going on, because often they have that lovely dark quality inside the centre, which is such a contrast to those very filmy soft and translucent petals. So here we go. So if we just come round to the edge all the way around there, so there we go. So that's sort of like, as you can see, it's starting to get some shape and some definition in it. So I think I do want to go in and get that centre a bit darker, even though, as I said, I'm not going to do black tonight. I think I'm probably going to do black tonight on that. So with that one, I'm just going to come here, black pens. You have so many pens in front of you, and you almost can't pick one up for looking. Right, so there we go. So I'm going to come in between my circles to begin with and just add a bit more dark into that sort of area, just coming round. Let's make that a bit bolder. So the circles that I've already drawn in, coming round, making them darker, going round, just leaving that bit of white at the moment. We might come in and make that darker, but we'll see. We're going to just come in and cluster, and of course you'll see that where you've got the smaller circles, they're going to go softer and darker as well, and that just kind of just softens and brings a bit more sort of shadow in. But I think that's looking quite nice just to make that a bit darker and a bit stronger. We may even come back to that and do a bit more, but I'm quite happy at the moment. But I can see maybe a bit more needs to be doing, because I really like the drama of that contrast between the two. And then again, sort of like if you want to sort of get that really looking quite nice and smoky, little tiny black lines, but just coming off that central edge. Let's not be frightened of adding that bit of darkness in, but I'm just doing little flicky, only a couple of millimetres, but just coming round that centre, following the edge of the circles that I've drawn on, just sort of like using them as a guideline. So pen onto the edge where I am and then just flicking it back away, and that becomes a bit darker, and it's sort of starting to sort of like make that centre really sultry. That's quite a good word for it. I always think they've got that sort of very I'm trying to think of, it's going out of my head now, who's that wonderful 60s artist who always had like incredibly dark, smoky eyes? It'll come back to me at some point tonight and I'll suddenly shout her name out. I'm all forgotten why I was thinking of her name, but there we go. But yeah, so that's got that lovely sort of darker kind of setter in. So that's quite nice and dramatic. So let's have a look at some of these leaf shapes that we've got in here. So I'm going to go for my green pens here. So I'm using green on green. I'm going to follow the shape. Let's see if this one's working. Oh gosh, it is quite a neon-y green. That's quite vibrant. Never mind. I think we'll go with that. Let's see. Yeah, why not? So, and then I'm going to just pick out some of those swirls that we managed to make and just follow that shape again to start off with. Just sort of outlining it round, and then some nice brush swirls. I can continue with that kind of curling in round that shape. It's very appealing to kind of go around that and make it a bit sort of stronger and darker. Let's try a different one. Is this I've got one of these pens. They're quite nice. They're like a brush pen. They're a bit like a brush pen and a sort of watercolour pen. They are apparently water soluble, so but it's quite a nice sort of thick line, so I can, that's nice to kind of draw that one. And then I'm going to give myself a centre kind of inside that, like that. And again, just quite simply, maybe just some lines coming out, radiating out from that. So you're still going to see that transition of the stripes and the lines and the colour through those lines. But again, if we give them a bit of a curl, a slight curve, it starts to give it a bit of form. And it's turning it into something, again, something could be like a sort of seed head or something that hasn't bloomed yet, just to sort of move, just to sort of give that kind of feel. And again, if I come in and we do some half lines from that edge, so it's the same technique but with a thicker pen and a different colour, it starts to have a different kind of feel, just to bring those lines around, so it's got that sort of different kind of quality to it. And I think I'm going to come around and give that a nice echoing line around it. Just feel I want to, that it sort of is crying out for something like that. And then we've got all these lovely, I've got these lovely sort of sweeping lines coming up here as well, sort of like with this sort of much paler green, but all these sort of marks here. So this is sort of like, I want to follow some of these and see where they take me. Just let them sweep up following that paint. Maybe just trying to draw into the, because I've got a little bit of white paper that's, or creamy paper that's coming through. So at the moment, I'm just trying to draw on that. And so when the paper disappears out and the paint takes over, I'm going to stop as well. So we're getting these sort of half lines, or not quite, sort of arcs really, rather than complete lines, just following the white paper. And then I've got some contrasting here because I've got a pale green, so I can sort of again work around that and see where they go. And that's sort of got, we're getting some movement happening now, aren't we, with that sort of, because it's really enhancing that brush stroke kind of coming up and across. I have got a red dribble coming down here. I'm debating at the moment whether to do something with that or whether to ignore it. So at the moment I'm going to ignore it and come back to it. So let's get some more of these white paper. I want to sort of find it and get rid of it. So I'm looking for the gaps in between the brushes strokes at the moment. There's quite a gap there, but that's nice to kind of get that in. And it's sort of like starting to, it's like that sort of sensation of when you see a record going around on a record player and you get like the light shining across it and you sort of see it reflecting on the grooves. It's got that kind of feel to it, hasn't it? Sort of as if there's sort of a lot of movement happening. So I can see one in there. I've got some up here. I've got a nice sort of bat. So I don't know what shape is kind of emerging out of here, but it's quite interesting. So let's keep doing it. Oh, I've hit that red line again. I'm going to ignore the red line for the moment. I might decide on doing something a bit different with it, but we'll see. So I'm just going to continue doing that. And it's got that nice sense of movement. And coming up, I've got these little red, I always want to say little red chaps as if they were people, but they have got already got quite a character. So I'm going to use my green pen on here. So we're using contrasting colours, our opposite colours, and that always, see, once you outline something in its opposite colour, it always makes it really stand out. It makes it very vibrant because you've got the two kind of like sparking off each other. Let me just move my camera up a little bit. There we go. It's quite hard to, I can't get my camera flat on completely, which is annoying. So you're seeing as if you're slightly looking up at these, but I'm just going to come around and outline around that just to kind of make them quite intense and bring around. I think I'm going to outline a third, maybe a greenish sort of one, because I sort of feel that two on their own look a bit strange. So let's add in as if we've got a pale green one as well. And then I'm going to do some half moon kind of shapes coming round. I want to get this a nice sort of dark cluster kind of feel happening round these. So I'm just adding in some half moons and then colouring them in, just so we're getting a sort of petal kind of feel. And I've got some of the white lines, the sort of the stripy brush grain lines here. So I'm going to bring those coming out of those shapes too. So where they hit the shape, I'm going to take them back. So, you know, maybe it's movement, maybe it's stalks or stems, I'm not sure, but just sort of feel that they're all kind of like part of this. Let's get some more little bumps coming in. And they could just be hollow circles, you know, you could just map them as hollow circles to begin with. But I'm going to turn these into sort of like maybe fruit kind of feeling or something a bit along those sort of lines. Just something that looks a bit sort of juicy, I suppose, or strawberry-like maybe. So I've just put some little dark greens in around there and up around here too. I think they've got little tiny sort of leaves or something, I don't know, just what it feels like. And then I'm going to give them a centre. So maybe a little, you know, nose or a little opening or something that makes them look sort of seed poddy, just to sort of take them. And then we're going to use our lines coming off those again to kind of give them some real shape. So I'm going to swap to, I'm certainly going to use the darkest sort of pink colour on these red ones. So again, really curved lines out so they look really nice and fat and juicy. So again, if you sort of do the quarters like little pumpkin sort of shapes, you know, and then you can kind of come in between those quarters, and that starts, it's sort of like satsumas, isn't it? That sort of like feel of the sort of segments that you get in a satsuma, and that sort of just starts to make them look lovely and round and kind of like planty. And it's a terrible British thing, that is, if you take a noun and stick a Y on the end, it turns it into an adjective, which doesn't really, because you wouldn't, you know, you would say plant-like technically, I suppose, but we do, you know, it's that thing of, oh, it's a bit, you know, if they said if an English person went into a room full of gibbons, they'd say, oh, it's a bit gibbony in here, rather than there's a lot of gibbons in here. But there we go. That's why English is an endlessly absorbing language. It will put up with all sorts of things. English is very, very biddable. Right, so I've got those sort of in the straight red there. I think I want to do a green in the sort of greeny one, because maybe it's not, although it's bigger, it's not ripe yet, obviously. Whatever the life cycle of this plant is, it's not quite ripe yet, or maybe it's a green version. But again, just those sort of green lines in. So we're starting to get this feeling of seed pods or fruits. Quite nice and autumnal in a way. Very harvesty, I think. This is definitely sort of like a doodle harvest. So now I've got this pale green, I can do some of my paint lines following some of those in green as well, in the lighter green. I mean, you could use blues, you can use all sorts to kind of get this effect, but I just want to pick up on that paint effect and just sort of see where it takes us really. And then I've got it's a nice big sort of wheel. So you might want to look for one of the larger kind of sweeps that you can sort of bring round just following that sort of line around. And then I've got kind of like a centre happening in here. So let's turn this into, like we've done here, but turn it into a slightly bigger centre. Maybe that needs my darker green to kind of come into. So maybe I'm thinking it's going to become like a really big fruit. I think that's what's going to happen with these sort of whirling lines around it. And we do lines coming the other way as well. So let's define this as centre. So I'm just trying to find, again, not a perfect circle, but just that centre of this big spiral or swoopy shape kind of coming round. And then I've got an edge here, so I'm going to make that darker again. I did put a green line around there, but I'm going to come back with my shadowing line, and this is going to come down this side. So we're starting to define that great big circle in that sort of shape there, and then I want to kind of imagine it's continuing this side a bit. So I'm just going to sort of swing a line behind this red flower and then kind of out that side. So we've got this sort of round shape happening. Let's put an extra edge round this sort of centre that we've done here. Let's give it a sort of, like, again, I've got a nice white paint line to follow. So if you haven't got a paint line, just decide where your line's going, just sort of as an echoing line again, so it's making like a kind of ridge. And we can add some texture and stuff onto this to make it look like the top of some kind of strange gourd. Gordon Bennett, you know. Apparently Gordon Bennett was a person who was very wealthy, and he became a sort of byline for, you know, throwing money around, like Gordon Bennett was throwing money around. That's apparently where it comes from. In my bottomless pit of random things that I know, I'm very good at pub quizzes, I am. Right, so I'm just looking for a slightly chunkier green pen, or slightly different tone. This is kind of a bluey green, so yeah, we're going to go for, let's see this. Right, so I'm going to do my sort of lines out, but the flower lines are quite flat, so I want to give this a bit more of a curve, I think. So it's got that feeling of shape, so it's coming out from that edge and just bringing some of these lines down and around, just to seeing what kind of effect that gives us. And just remembering that edge is going to be my sort of the seed head here, so it's going to come under here and round again. And just a few more in to begin with. You can see how using that curve is giving this a shape. It's really helping it kind of pop out towards us and giving it a kind of a body and a presence. Just coming around through there and curling under there. Who's getting someone's getting interference from the animal kingdom in the background, I can hear. So I've just done that, so we've just got that sort of larger kind of shape. So we're sort of seeing this sort of, I think there's something about these colours. It's got a very kind of oddly Chinese kind of feel. There's very popular kind of jade green and peach kind of colour in a traditional Chinese painting, funnily enough. So I'm just again going to do some of my half lines in, just to kind of start getting a little bit of shadow kind of, and even when they sort of cross over some of the lines that you've done, it starts to add sort of a bit of dark and a bit of tone. So I'm going to do some more. I'm going to come back with my slightly thicker pen, and I want to get some more thickness into some of the lines lower down on here. You can use the ones that you've already drawn, but I'm just doing half of them again. The brush pen's quite good for this because you can kind of put the brush on and then kind of pull it back down, so it just thickens that line. It's got quite a nice effect doing that. So I'm going to keep on coming round doing that, and it's got a lovely just that extra bit of shadow and kind of depth. It's really starting to help this sort of pop out. So let's get some more darkness into the corner, because I've got obviously much more white paper around by that red flower where I left a bit of white paper showing through, but that's okay. We can add some dark tones, but again, it's not all the way, it's just on the sort of first little bit of each line, and it just starts to give that a sort of edge of darkness. And I'm liking this sort of swirls that are coming, so I'm going to do some more of those, because I don't know why they're giving it, they're really helping to give it a kind of round feel, like it's a great big green pumpkin thing. We should have gone off for oranges and we could have turned into a Halloween picture, but I think this is nicer. And then as we come down into the centre where this circle is, I want to do a little bit more line work again, because I want to get a bit of shadow as if it's dipping down into that central well in the middle. We'll come up with something to go in the middle of that to kind of, because we want the eyes being drawn into there, we want to put something in there for the viewer to see composition wise. But I'm just adding some tonal lines again, sort of both texture and pattern, but also tone, just to kind of darken towards the centre to help get that kind of feeling of it being around. So I love the way from, you know, quite a flat painted shape, we're starting to give form, and we're starting to give solidity with the pens, and the paint marks stop being sort of light and delicate, and they start looking like surface and texture, which is, you know, really interesting. I think the way that sort of transition, and these are now kind of sitting on top like this, they're sort of growing. This has kind of got to be on top as well, so I'm going to put a bit of sort of line work, maybe a thicker line just round and underneath, so that this is definitely casting a shadow on my gourd below, like that. And then maybe this edge of the red flower where it's coming across, if I put some shadow in just by putting a little bit of darker pen, that starts to make this pop out and be on top of the green pumpkin. And then we can just again build in some of these lines. And if you want to get some more texture onto the surface of this sort of shape, I think we want to keep the flowers being, there's got to be a lightness about the flowers, so we need to get a bit more texture. I'm liking this kind of bubbliness that these kind of give us, this kind of like so almost warty kind of feel. So I'm going to come in and going to put a few more circles in, and then we can have a go making them look a bit more 3D and give them a kind of presence, so they're a bit more of a textural thing and not just on the surface. We'll get some of those in. I think the colours are quite weirdly 1950s as well, aren't they? I'm always thinking of sort of like old school 50s illustrations, that sort of like soft tones of that salmony pink and green. It suddenly makes me think of those sort of like 1950s cookbooks. I don't know if you've ever seen such a thing, but I'm always quite fascinated by vintage images like that. They're always quite, you know, entertaining. So again, we can give them a centre, and we can give them a curved set lines out from the centre, and it starts to make them look again like a little sort of surface item like that. It's really simple, but it's very effective. Just as you do your dark line, it doesn't have to be completely in the middle little spot, it just has to be, you can do it slightly off the centre, and then bring your curved lines round over that, and they start to look like they're sitting, like they're sort of 3D things. And if you want to get them to look even more like that, we can then come in with a bit of extra shadow underneath like that, and then they start to look like they're sort of popping up off the surface, and they can even be casting a little shadow like that in the same kind of way. And then some of these lines, we can increase that feeling of in and out. It's if we, when it comes down to the top pillar, could we give it kind of a curve, so we're just increasing that shape with a sort of curve on it. That starts to help making it look like it's a deeper sort of ridge, so we can increase the depth of those by giving them some stronger lines. Then here where it comes around the bottom, we do the same sort of thing. If we give just that little curve, so that we're leaving it, sort of gives it that segmented pumpkin kind of feel, just by putting that leaving that half moon of pale paint, and then using our dark tones to kind of come in and create this as a ridge or kind of form. And we can slightly push it out the shape as well, so it's sort of giving it much more depth. And this is becoming quite an unusual shape. I'm quite enjoying all the textures that we're getting in here. It's starting to have a really nice illustrating kind of feel. I don't know what it's illustrating, a guide to strange and wondrous alien plants maybe, but let's just come in and give some shadow round these. And there's something I think working, because we're working with the same tonal group, so we're doing dark green on a green background. This is why I think it's really helping to make it look like shadow, because when you see a shadow cast on an object, it's a darker version of the object's main colour. You don't usually see, unless you've got very strong light conditions, you don't usually see a solid black shadow on an object. It's actually a darker tone of whatever the shadow's falling onto. And I think that's what's really helping to make this become like quite a sort of chunky 3D object by doing this, just this little softening of these shapes and edges. And again, if you're kind of itching to get to your gold paint, I think I've done these shapes before, and then adding some of the line work in gold on them starts to make them look like exotic little sort of pin cushions, or you know, little bits of embroidery somehow. So that's always good fun to add to that kind of feel. So just bring some more segments in. This is turning into a sort of very strange alien flowery harvest picture, but you know, I'm quite enjoying it, so that's good. And it's amazing what you can start to, you know, you start off with just this very abstract paint swirls, and then they take you on such a wonderful journey to sort of to discover and make things that you didn't know you were going to draw when you started. So I've got one more up here I'm going to add in. And we can try doing some with pink lines as well, just to see how they look differently, because they've got these sort of pinker ones here. Maybe adding a small amount of red detail on them will sort of, again, help them match up to these sort of pinky ones here. So we'll try that as well in a minute. So I'm just putting a bit of a thicker line round the bottom on one side of these, so they've got as if they're casting a shadow, and they're going to come down onto we're going to get some more shadow onto this sort of edge here, coming round. Here we go. Again, bringing those lines. We've got to think what we're going to do. I think maybe we could get some red into this middle section here. That would be quite good. So because we're kind of drawing the eye of our viewer into this sort of section here, so we need to reward them for their you know, for coming this far with us. But I'm just going to do this again. I'm just softening those lines where they come down. I'm just softening that shape, so it's not a square edge, it's just got a rounding edge to it, almost like sort of putting in like a sort of vaulted window, that kind of shape. But just want to soften those shapes so they're not too square, and it just helps to make it look more kind of organic, I think, coming round. And then we'll have a think about how we can get some red and some tones into this middle section here, and maybe look at some of the other flower shapes. I've got two little red guys up here. They've got to kind of be added into the alien fruit basket. So I'm just going to go around to that. I'm just going to have one quick slurp of my tea, as it's getting to tea slurping time. Lovely. Right, so I've got a little circle here. You may have got more circles in than me. You may have got less. But I think hopefully you're getting this sort of, if we pull back a little bit, you can see we've got this sort of feeling of this sort of big round shape here. It's looking quite chunky. It's quite nice. You could sort of feel that you could reach out and pick it up, which is what we're kind of doing. It's amazing how doing this very sort of random pattern work, and really it's not you know, I'm not trying to be representational, but it's actually also helping us to see how you can use techniques like this to do in more representational art, just by seeing how these curved shapes help give you this curved feel. So I'm just bringing my lines down. I want to put a bit more shadow into this bit here, I think, because it's kind of got this feeling of the red flower being on top. And again, on this shape here, I think it needs to have a bit more shadow on it. So I'm just going to continue this sort of dark line along, just matching the edge of that flower, but with a sort of shading line. So it's definitely got this on top. And then I want to put a little bit more shadow into this edge. This edge is lighter because we didn't have so much paint on here to begin with. So we're going to have to kind of go in and use our pen line to kind of get this darker and a bit more shadowed. And I'm going to put a bit of shadow around this little guy here, and bring these shapes through. Just continue these lines down and through that we've got marked out, and that's just add a bit of extra shadow and a bit of extra darkness around here, because it's going to really help bring this up to the surface. And so the flower is definitely on top. And there we go. So that's got most of those in. So let's think about the centre of this shape here. So I'm going to get a red pen. I definitely want some sort of red forms. I think we're going to go, let's go for maybe some lines, maybe some directional lines, kind of, or some, I think I'm going to do like combinations. I've got like a pale green area here and I've got sort of darker area here. So I'm going to start just by finding my dividing line between the two. So I've just got that kind of line going across, and then I'm going to pack in some lines coming this way, and I'm going to try and get them so that they start off really close together and they fan out a little bit, so we get that sort of slight, get that extra strength of colour along this sort of wobbly line. So just try and start them close together and then let them sort of spray and sort of fan out. So I'm just using a chisel tip marker pen, so it's quite a strong colour, but even though it's a marker pen, it's got a relatively fine point. It's not as fine as some of the pens I use, but it's quite a nice bold colour. It's amazing, you know, what pens you can find that are really good to work with. You don't have to all be, and you get that sort of slight, you know, lovely sort of what they call moire effect, where the lines being close together, particularly because they're over the green, it starts to give a slight optical illusion, as if there's some sort of movement happening. So if you just get your lines sort of nice and close together, then just let them spread out. It's a photographer's nightmare. They're always moaning about it. They have to photograph certain fabrics. It creates like weird patterns when the fibres are running really close together like this. So I'm just going to come round and bring these lines just curving around. And I think I'm going to put some circles. So I mean, all the shapes that we're using, all the lines that we're using really are just very simple shapes and circles. They don't have to be complicated to be really effective. So I'm going to come in here and do some thick-walled red circles. We'll come and get a second colour in here as well, so we can get a bit more definition in, but let's just put in some circular shapes. Eventually we can make them look like kind of berries or something. We might get the old white pen out. That's quite good for adding highlights, as we discovered last week. So I'm just going to put in some circles, keep them nice and thick, but just poking them into that space there. Here we go. And then of course where you've got small space, you can put small ones in. So that's just sort of got those in as a base. And then I'm going to go with slightly darker colour in between them to again give them a kind of shadowed kind of feel. So let's come in with my dark brown. I've said I was going to use dark brown this week and I've hardly touched it, which is always the way it goes, always the best laid plans, but I can just come in with some darker sort of sepia colour and come in round those. And that's not working. I think the pen's giving up and with that one, so we'll not use sepia, we'll use a black pen because sepia seems to have died, so we're not going to use that. That's better. So let's come in and going around the shapes that I've drawn just to add in some darkness in between again, so sort of some shadow, just amping up the shadow in that so they're looking a bit more intense. So going round and leaving the red. Then I think I'm going to get some white pen and add some white highlights in there as well, just to add to the contrast between the layers. And we can try some white highlights on some of the shapes that we're getting, because we've got these sort of like we've used the shadows to kind of push some of these ridges back, and we can use the white pen to enhance the highlights. And sort of all the time when you're drawing like this, you've got this almost like back and forth, push me, pull you kind of between making bits darker and making bits lighter to sort of get to increase the drama on the shapes that we're drawing. So I'm just coming around, just putting some dark into that edge here because I want this to look quite sort of entertaining when it sort of comes in. And then I'm going to come with my white pen, which luckily is nice and accessible where I can get to it, and then we can come in and add, although it's quite a light colour, it's just increasing that moment of lightness on some of these, so they've got like a sort of gleamy kind of quality. And again, you can add it into some of the edges around. That's quite a light green, so it's not showing up hugely, but this could be a moment where you put in some gold or some sort of colours like that, you know. And where you've got your striping here, you can just put a bit of white again in between just at the end, and that's adding a bit of highlight again, and it just helps to give a different contrast between the two. So There we go. And again, where I've got this contrast with a sort of dark shadow, I can come in and add some white to increase that in that sort of green zone. You know, come in and just add a bit of extra white. And we can do that all the way through, but that's something that you might want to do more of when we've got sort of more time. So let's have a look back and see where we are now. We want to get some other shapes in. Let's think about this sort of shape here. So let's put its edge in. I'm going to use a red pen again, just to come in and brighten up that edge, following that round. Here we go. Give that some nice drama. And I've got to decide now when I get round to this point, which way round are we going to do? We're going to, which one's in front and which one's behind? So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to bring this one. So this half one here is kind of in front too. So I can bring that round there. And I've got to do, I'm going to put my dark centre in. Oh, I'm holding the black pen, that's where it is. So again, sort of cluster of circles in there with plenty of contrast. You can make the wall of the circles thicker just by going around a couple of times instead of just doing one line. And they don't have to be on top of each other. In fact, if they're not totally accurate, then you can more quickly fill in that kind of dark centre again. And now looking at this one, because we've got so much nice detail on this one, I'm probably going to put more edge around that one. I think they need to have a bit more going on. Otherwise they're going to get overwhelmed by the sort of green pieces. But that's my sort of dark centre in there. And then I'm going to take pink lines up, and we can put a bit of a wave on it. This looks quite effective. If you sort of like instead of just going straight up from the middle to the border, if you kind of put a bit of a wave like this on it, and then each time you go round, you slightly mimic. You'll try and mimic the wave, but you'll find it's really hard to get it perfect. But that's fine because you just keep following that line through. You can do them closer together than this, but I'm just going around conscious of time, just trying to sort of, but hopefully you can see that by doing those curved lines, it then gives your petals a bit of a ripple. And if you try and kind of go down near the edge and then up in the middle and down towards the centre, if you can, so that the line's kind of sloping down towards that dark centre, that kind of seems to work with the way that petals are formed. So around they go. And so you just bring that sort of curve as towards the edge. They kind of give some movement in that kind of feel. And so I'm just going to keep adding those on. And you can keep on fitting these lines in between. And actually the closer you can get them, the more kind of effective it is. Just letting those lines flow and kind of each time trying to see which shape you want to follow with them. You know, so I'm just following the line through. Here we go. And you can see as they get closer together again, you get this sort of like effect of optical illusions where you start to see the kind of ripple moving through the petals. And also as the lines come together towards the centre, you're bringing more of the colour closer together at that point. So you get more kind of shadow and more shade and stronger colour towards the centre. And it's quite nicely balanced by doing it on top of, because of where I'm doing it's got a sort of white underlay, so it's sort of slightly changing that, so you can get all sorts of effects going that way. So let's bring these round and up through here. There we go. And again, if you then want to go and make that flower edge a bit darker, you can still do I'm just going to do once round just by doing some half lines into that edge. And because you can see that's immediately giving that edge a bit of substance and a bit of shadow as I come round. Just sort of, and you know, you can keep going back and keep on adding more and more lines in between, and on the high bits you can add white lines if you want to add some more highlight. I'll do that very quickly on this one, a little bit this one, so you can kind of see what it's like. I mean, as ever, we never quite get finished in one session, but then it gives you something to go away and work on. And something that appears to be really quite sort of simple shapes, you can see how much detail you can build up on them, and you can get really into this whole composition. You've got an awful lot there to sort of keep you going for the rest of the week, you know, which I like to do. So that you've got, it's not just about tonight, you've got something to enjoy for the rest of the week. And then I can come in, see if I want to put into this area, which is sort of like curving up, I can add a little bit of white just in between those red lines. And hopefully you're seeing that's just starting to add, it's quite subtle, but it just adds that little extra bit of highlight on that petal, which helps to enhance that curl kind of feeling. So, you know, it's just sort of seeing where, so to get shadow, you put more lines together. To have highlights, you leave bigger gaps between your lines most of the time. So you're getting that difference between the two. You can see that sort of coming around, that's just starting to enhance that a bit more. I think I definitely want to get some more drama onto those sort of that big flower. I think it needs some more like strong red around its edge. So like I'm going to come in with that stronger pen and just put short flicks. I'm just going to do a little bit because so you can kind of see where I'm going with it, but can just add a bit more, but closer together, just to enhance that edge. I want it to have a bit more vibrancy, strength. I think strengthen it up as it goes round. So I want that edge to have a lovely strong line of colour going across there. And then this one again, I'm going to do my centre. I'm going to do my lines coming off that way. Then I've got this sort of half one here. So I don't think I don't think I'm going to turn this into like a gourd because it's only a half. It's sort of like a sweep, but I quite like that. So what can we do with that one? It's almost got like tears, hasn't it? A bit like that feeling of a sort of tiered flamenco dancer's skirt. So I'm going to enhance. I'm going to sort of like go with that. I'm going to put in some shadow. You have to remember that's masking tape there, so that will all come away with a nice clean sort of stripy edge, not a straight edge. So I'm just going to come and do those in green, and then maybe it's similar kind of idea, but bring some lines kind of out. Flicky lines again sort of round here, but sort of radiating as if this was part of a kind of starburst somewhere under there. And again, if I'm going to just make that greener, darker shadow under there. That's it. So that's just sort of again a bit dark shadow, contrasting with the green against the red, and then I can radiate these lines out using the brush pen here. And the brush pen is quite nice because it kind of drags a little bit up the surface. You don't get a completely solid line, so it gives quite a nice kind of feel. And then like maybe under this line again, look, coming out, but like from that darkened edge, so it helps to kind of again give a slightly shadowing feel. Just flicking that out. Here we go, working my way around. So it's got a nice kind of layering feel. It does kind of have that sort of Spanish dancery kind of lots of ruffles feeling. And I can do it with quite a soft brush. There's I could go back and do it with a harder line as well. Just sort of combining the two. And I can also then think about using some white again to kind of add as the highlight. So I get these going all the way around, and then where the white comes, or where I could use white, would be on this sort of highlight edge here. So almost like flicking some white. Oh, how can I do this without? I think about that because it's very hard to draw without covering up for you completely, but just sort of again in echoing kind of back with those sort of marks. Just sort of along that edge as well, and that's kind of adding to that effect. It's going with what's there, but it's just enhancing it a bit. So you can see that sort of acts like a kind of row of highlight on, then it just sort of helps to really make that, give that some depth, just by sort of adding in extra light. And it's just like put the pen on the line and flick it up in the direction you want to go, and let that flick run out, so you don't have to, you don't really stop the pen constantly, just let the flick kind of run out, and you get a much more sort of like softer line. It doesn't have too much of a solid sort of full stop to it, which I think works better. It gives it a bit more, it's a bit more dynamic than sort of just doing a line and stopping. There's nothing wrong with that, it's a different feel, that's all. And I think when you're doing something like this where you want to have this sort of texture, it just helps to keep that texture from getting too heavy and too controlled. Right, so that's kind of, you know, that's how we could do something like that with those sort of like frills there. And we've got another kind of half moon shape kind of up here. We've got another one sort of lurking under here. Definitely lurking, that one. It's got a very lurky nature to it. This one has got a nice, it's got a lovely sort of roundy sort of centre on there. So let's see if we can do something with that round one again. I think that's going to become another kind of plant shape. Right, so let's I can sort of see it's starting of here. I can just about see where it comes in its arc, comes sort of round, then it becomes much stronger, that arc, and it comes round to about here. So I can continue that round. So I've got a nice sort of shape in there, and then I've got a nice middle bit I can kind of pick out sort of round there as well. So that's kind of here. I'm just going to start sort of outlining some of the main shapes that I'm going to work on later, so that you can kind of see how the whole composition is sort of coming along. So we've got another shape under here, so that's quite a nice brush shape to pick up on. So that's going to come sort of tucking away up into there. And then there's this sort of like at the top here, I don't know if you can quite almost see it. Gosh, if I just tip up a little bit, it is there. You can just about see it. I've got like this sort of brush stroke up here. So I think, again, I want to do something a little bit more abstract with that. So I'm just going to take some lines following some of the brush marks through that, so it becomes a bit more kind of a background, maybe, or sort of some of these marks. So it's not all having to become something, but it can just be marks. It can just be a kind of movement through the paint again. But like, and we've got the lurking one down here, haven't we? That's sort of definitely peeking out from behind there. So let's draw that edge in and see what we can see with that one. Definitely got sort of like quite strong there. I'm liking, sometimes you want to leave some areas of white in a picture, and I think there's a nice shape around there. So let's give that the sort of inside again. This almost looks like a highlight on it, doesn't it? We can, and if I put some shadow in around that red flower edge, just sort of coming in around there again, that's definitely pushing it underneath. And alongside those white ones, I can flick some lines kind of coming round. The brush that I'm using is just a brush pen. You can get loads of different kind of brush pens, and they're fantastically, you can usually get some really cheap and cheerful ones, again, because they're quite popular. If you look in the kids section in supermarkets and that sort of thing, they often have some really nice ones. These ones, the one that I'm actually using is apparently it's a watercolour pen. So it's supposed to be, I'm just going to continue that line there. It's supposed to be you can add a wet brush on it afterwards to change its shape, which is quite handy. Some of them I find don't work that well, but some of them do. So it's a bit hit and miss with all these cunning inventions. You could, of course, do a line with your watercolour pencils. You could draw all these lines, and then you could go back in with a wet brush and tease out some of the paint, which is a really fun, and it can get some really fantastic effects by doing that. And it's kind of, sometimes I quite like working with watercolour pencils, because it's a bit like those magic colouring books you used to get when you were a child, because you sort of do all the drawing and it's quite sort of dry looking, and then you sort of plunge the wet brush onto it and you suddenly pull out all these amazing colours, and the colours can mix and run and you get some really interesting effects, and it's sort of quite magical, really. So they are quite fun. I've probably mentioned it before, but my favourite watercolour pencils are by Derwent, and they're called Ink Tense, which is a terrible name, but they're a lovely pencil, and the paint that they make, I suppose you'd say, is very much like an ink, like a sort of painting ink, so it's got very intense colour to it, and I love them, but they're quite expensive. So I don't have very many, but I've got a few. And what's nice about them is you can go and you can buy sort of a tin, and then you can fill the tin and buy just the colours you want. So you can sort of gradually, if you've got a particular project, you can just get those colours to start off with. So I'm just again trying to find, I think I'm going to turn this one into a kind of gourd shape. So I'm starting off with the sort of the record, the long playing record lines of whizzingness kind of coming round, and then I'm going to bring my curved lines into that sort of central opening like we did before, and gradually that's going to become another kind of donut or gourd kind of shape happening on behind there. And that slowly, again, just by using those curved lines, it just starts to give them form, and it turns it from being a flat disc of a shape into something with a bit more 3D quality to it, which is always so satisfying. And then again, if I want to think about where I want to put some shadow, so as it comes into the centre, I want to put just some half curved lines in like that, because it disappears down towards the hollow in the middle. You get more shadow appearing there. And even on here, and again around that sort of flower it's overlapping, we can put a bit more shadow in, because then it definitely brings these flowers. I mean, the red always has the effect of looking slightly on top, because it's a brighter colour, because it's the stronger of the two colours, and green's quite a cool background recessive colour. It helps very much to sort of have these red ones pushing out, helps them push forwards. A little bit of colour theory there. And then as I come around the edge, again, I can just add small little flicks of shade lines. And where I've got the segments coming in, that's when I can decide to come in and soften that shape and make it look like a segment. And I'm going to try on this one, just softening that shape in there and giving that a different kind of feel again. And as it comes down to that edge, giving it some curve so that it again looks like it's sort of a softer shape. It just gives it that kind of bumpiness, just to sort of soften those up, and they start to look like you could run your finger over them and they'd be sort of lumpy and bumpy. This time of year is great. There's always some, because we're in October now, so alongside the sort of carving pumpkins that are everywhere, and you think, gosh, there's hundreds of them until they sell out, and then suddenly people are rushing around on October 31st looking for pumpkins like they're going out of fashion. But they also have some wonderful squashes this time of year, which I never know what to do cooking wise with them. I always sort of buy them because they look so amazing, and then I never quite know, and they're always actually, to be honest, a bit disappointing if you ever sort of cook them. They're just like sort of a bit wet and not very exciting to eat, but they make the most beautiful things to draw because they have these wonderful exotic sort of like surfaces, and they somehow look something between a vegetable and some sort of ceramic sculpture, so I always quite like to find some this time of the year, really just to sort of paint and draw them because they're just so unusual. And then these lovely sort of fresh colours. And I do some floristry courses as well from time to time. And one year I did, going pre-COVID days, back in the day, I did a course of sort of autumn flower arrangements, and we used these squashes and things as centerpieces among some autumn flowers. They did look absolutely stunning when we finished. They're really attractive and they work really well. So I just like having them around. I believe if you leave them in a cool, dry place, they kind of completely dry and become quite sort of everlasting. And then you can spray them gold for Christmas, because it's always a good tip. Anything you can spray gold, you can have out at Christmas. It looks Christmassy. It's great. And back eons ago, when I used to do weddings, I used to be a dressmaker and do bridal dresses, because I'm one of those people that does all sorts of weird stuff. And I had a girl once there who had them all in her autumn wedding table decorations in her bouquet, little tiny ones in a bouquet, and they did look great. But I made her a beautiful rust-coloured velvet dress with a great long train and big sleeves, because that was my sort of thing. And it all looked very medieval and lovely. So while I've been nattering away, I've just been giving that some extra curves into those sections to give that a different kind of feel, give it a sort of different surface. And we're going to have to stop soon. Oh, it's always this way. I'm always just really getting into it and then it's time to stop. But you could even do things like just then outlining that shape with a thinner green line. So I'm just sort of randomly, and then let that peter out. And can you see how that is another way of making these forms become quite sort of 3D and giving that sort of, you feel you could reach out with your finger and they'd be all bumpy to touch. So just by doing light, don't draw too hard, let the pen sort of break up a bit, don't try and do really solid lines, keep it kind of light, and it kind of gives you this nice segmented kind of feel. Just sort of, it's like adding a mid-tone or a sort of, just to soften that kind of edge, but it gives it this nice textured feel. And so there we go. I think we're going to probably have to wind it up now, although I hope you will keep going with yours and keep on creating this sort of strange but rather beautiful kind of floral harvest. I don't know what it is, but you know, I think it's lovely, and I hope you've enjoyed creating in these lovely 1950s style colours, and we'll keep on finishing until it's done.